So you want to learn to code? Maybe you're just starting out, or you've been thinking about it for a while, but you're not sure where to begin. Here's the truth. If I could go back and start from scratch, this is exactly what I'd do to go from beginner to software engineer as fast as possible. In this video, I'm going to share the step-by-step approach that I'd take based on the experiences I've had over the past few years as a software engineer. I'm going to talk you through the essential skills and the starting points for each of those. This is the roadmap I wish I had when I was just starting out. Hey, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name's Becca. I'm a full-time software engineer, Pilates instructor, and someone with multiple interests and multiple passions. I love sharing bits of my life, insights into my career, tips on productivity, and things to help you live your best life. So let's get into the video. A strong starting point for learning to code is always going to be to start with the fundamentals. Learn the data structures like arrays and lists, hash maps, sets, queues, everything you can, and then learn the variables, the functions, how to write methods, learn about OOP, object-oriented programming, learn about all of those principles, the principles of good quality code, and basically learn all of the fundamentals, because this is really going to set you up perfectly. And there are so many free resources online and different types of resources for different learning types. With the internet, with ChatGPT, with AI, with so many of these tools, there's literally no excuse now. There's so much information out there. If you learn best from reading things, the best place to start is by reading documentation. The documentation is always a great place to start because you know that it's a trusted source. But alternatively, there are loads of other reliable websites also that break down the information in different ways. So for example, ones that I found really helpful and still find really helpful are W3 Schools, Geeks for Geeks, and Done as well. So they break down concepts in a really nice way to understand. And sometimes it's nice to use websites that have an inbuilt code editor. So for example, Geeks for Geeks also has one, but another example is Codecademy. So this has a really nice way for you to practice the code, and it gives you loads of different problems and things to work through so that you're actually practicing at the same time as learning. Codecademy breaks down a lot of the fundamentals and walks you through each stage. And it gets you writing code and solving problems right from the very beginning. And then there's also Code Wars, which has different challenges for you to solve. And then alternatively, if you think you learn better by watching, of course, YouTube is a great place for that. YouTube has thousands of videos and it's so beneficial. There are so many videos that you can watch. Like I said, there's literally no excuse. There are so many different channels and so many different creators on YouTube. So it's just about finding the one that clicks with you. And then if you can pay, LinkedIn Learning also has some good things that cover the fundamentals. Udemy has some really good courses, and then there's also Khan Academy. I haven't actually used Khan Academy myself, but I have heard that they do provide some good coding courses as well. And I just want to note that all of the things I've mentioned are my own opinion, and that's what's worked for me in the past. So again, you just need to find what works for you and just figure out, try a bit of everything. The second tip I have is to work on side projects. This is where you put all of those things you learn in the fundamentals in those courses into actual practice. Try and take these ideas and see what you can code with them. And if you can't think of a good side project, just have a Google. There'll be so many suggestions online. If you just Google good side projects for beginners, there'll be endless suggestions. For example, creating a to-do list app is a very common starting point. And then that way, if you choose to do a common side project, there'll be tons of resources you can use and so many tutorials. So again, use a tutorial if you find that helps your learning style, but try not to get trapped into the idea of just following a tutorial blindly, because you won't learn anything that way. You have to also know how to internalize that learning and be able to apply it across many different situations. So take what you can from one tutorial and see if you can adapt it to a different project or a different idea. See what you can tweak from the original source. My next tip is learn how to write tests. If if you want to learn to code, at least to an ability where you can use it in real life projects, or if you want to be able to use it in a future job or become a software engineer, writing tests is essential. In real life, things would never be shipped to production without proper tests. And as a software developer, it's your job to make sure everything is fully tested. Writing tests ensures that your code works as expected, and it gives you that confidence to push it to live, and it gives you that confidence to be able to add functionality or make changes in the future without breaking existing code. So how do you start writing tests? First of all, start by learning testing frameworks. Start by the beginner-friendly testing frameworks that are suited to your language. So for example, JUnit for Java or PyTest for Python. Find the testing framework and get to grips with that. Then start by writing simple unit tests. So just checking the functionality of single units of code. And then learn about different types of testing. So after your unit tests, maybe integration tests, maybe end-to-end testing, maybe some manual testing, maybe play around with some tools like Postman, and just work out the different types of testing that you can do. So why is writing tests valuable as a beginner? I think it really deepens your understanding of your code because it helps you see it from a different angle. It helps you understand what your code should be doing. If you know how to write a test for it, you should know how the code works. Maybe you want to experiment around with TDD, test-driven development. So that's the idea of writing those tests first. And having well-written tests helps make debugging so much easier. It helps you really pinpoint where the issue is if you do encounter any issues or errors. And then if you do want to go into software engineering and make it your career, writing tests is essential. So having this practice from now really sets you up and helps you prepare for that. One thing you'll quickly realize when learning to code, or even after years of being a software engineer, is that encountering bugs and errors is inevitable. No matter how experienced you are, encountering bugs is just part of the job. They're not a sign that you're bad at coding or that you're bad at the job or that you don't know what you're doing. It's just a natural part of the process, and it's just inevitable when you're building software. And because they're inevitable, it's essential that you know how to debug. Debugging is the process of finding and fixing errors in your code. When your code doesn't work the way you expected, like maybe it crashes or maybe it's giving the wrong outputs, debugging is that process to be able to find out why. Then once you know what happened, you're able to figure out what you can do to change that to get it working correctly. So, how to get started with debugging? First of all, learn how to read error messages. Error messages can feel very intimidating at first. They can look like just a massive wall of text full of technical jargon that just looks like gibberish. But don't ignore the errors that your program throws. Really take a moment to read it properly and figure out what it's trying to say to you and where the error is. It will normally tell you what line number and whereabouts in the code the issue is. Then next, maybe you can start with some print statements just for simplicity. In the beginning, adding those print statements can be really helpful as a beginner to just track the progress of your code, track the flow of it, and understand what your code is doing behind the scenes. Then I want you to familiarize yourself with those debugging tools. So most IDEs come with these inbuilt tools. So for example, IntelliJ, Visual Studio Code, and many others will have a debug tool. Learn how to use breakpoints and watch variables, and learn how to step through your code. So how do you practice debugging? First, see if you can deliberately break your code. See if you can introduce simple errors where you know where it should go wrong, and then be able to debug through that to try and fix it. Then maybe you can take on bug fixing challenges. Some coding platforms offer debugging exercises just so you can sharpen up those skills. And then you can analyze open source code. If you bring the project locally, and then you can work your way through it, stepping through the code. This not only gets you used to the debug tool, but it also helps with your coding knowledge. It helps you see how other people are coding problems, and it helps you understand what they're doing. Often, open source projects are created by experienced professionals. So if you find a reliable piece of code and you can work through that, This helps you see those industry practices. It should follow good coding principles, it should have a good structure, and it should be well tested. It should help you understand proper code organization and naming conventions and just the architecture in general. So it can also be useful to look at other people's code so you can see ideas of things that you wouldn't necessarily have written yourself in your own personal projects. Now my next tip is learn how to use Git. Learning Git is an essential skill for beginners who want to become software engineers. Git is a tool that helps you keep track of changes to your code. Think of it like a time machine for your project. It helps you see previous versions and it allows you to go back to a previous version if you've made a mistake. Not only that, but it's also the standard tool for collaborating with other developers. So the sooner you learn it, the better prepared you'll be for working in the real world. Learn the key concepts like repositories, commits, branches, merges, and then learn the key commands like git init, git add, git status, git push, git pull. Just make sure you understand the basic commands first. The concept of Git can be a little confusing and can take some people a long while to learn. And in the future when working with Git, if you do things wrong, it can be detrimental to your work. If you make a wrong step, there are chances you could just delete all of your work and mess up previous versions. And that's something you want not to happen. So it's a good idea that you get to grips with the basics of Git from now, learn the fundamentals, and this will set those foundations and help set you up for working with it in the future. Now, my most important tip of all is to practice, practice, practice. Coding is something that you learn by doing, and it's a hands-on skill like learning an instrument or playing a sport. You can read all the tutorials you want or watch all of the YouTube videos you want, but you won't actually learn the underlying concepts and learn how to do it for yourself unless you practice. Practice is where the real learning happens. And this practice helps build that muscle memory. When you code often, certain things start to feel like second nature to you. Whether it's writing functions or solving problems or debugging, your brain starts to recognize these patterns and you become better and better at doing it each time. And the more you practice, the more mistakes you'll probably make. And that's a good thing. We learn from those mistakes. So you need to practice to give yourself a chance to be able to make the mistakes. If you don't write any code, you can't make any mistakes and you can't learn. So don't let the fear of getting it wrong stop you from actually starting. Ultimately, coding is about persistence and perseverance. Coding is a skill that improves with consistent effort. The more you practice, the more you'll learn. And remember that every programmer started somewhere. Everyone started from the beginning. And with enough practice, you'll get there too. So that's it for this video. Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I hope this gave you some useful tips on how you can get started as a beginner learning to code. If you enjoyed, please give it a like, subscribe, and hopefully see you next time.